So, on to today's event. It's with Jess, our lovely Jess here.
Hi, everybody.
So Jess is raring and ready to go. Jess, if you would like to have a quick, short summary about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us what you're looking like, what you're wearing, where the weather is, and then you can get on with your presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phoenix. And just while I'm doing that, it's not currently letting me share screen. I'm not sure if there's a button that you need to push on that one. But my name's Jess Wise. I'm based up here at Highland Wildlife Park in the Cairngorms National Park, which is a lovely office. I'm dressed in my very boring navy uniform, navy polo shirt, and I've got short brown hair. My pronouns are she, her. My remit up here is everything from formal education to informal community outreach to the talks and tours, programs on site, and very excitingly establishing pretty much a brand new volunteer program, which I'm going to be sharing a little bit about with you today. Oh, perfect. It's come up for me now, Phoenix. Thank you. So I am going to share a slide deck that I'm very happy to send around and give access to at the end. Oh, it's thinking about it. Can everybody, hopefully, it's still thinking about presentation mode.
You good to
Can
go?
everybody see that full screen, and is that clear enough for everyone? Brilliant. So I've got 15 minutes. You will know in about 30 seconds that I'm a bit of a talker. So I'm relieved to know that we've got, I think, a good Q&A a bunch of time at the end. So please do feel free to pop any messages in the chat and I can work through those. But also I'm not rushing off anywhere afterwards and I'd be very happy to share my email address. So today, just like Phoenix said, we're going to be talking about our volunteer program. And for us up here at Highland Wildlife Park, we definitely class ourselves in that bracket of rural offering. And we're going to be talking particularly about our recruitment plans, how we're working on retaining volunteers, and being based in the Highlands of Scotland, resilience as well. How can we ensure that what we're offering is actually going to be appropriate for people to commit to long term? It was lovely to see so many people join today and several familiar names, but I just thought I'd do a little bit of a brief recap to start with, so I can make sure that we're all on the same page. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of an intro to RZSS, really quick recap of where we are starting from now and where do we want to go, and then dial a bit more deeply into the recruitment goals and our retention plans, and before telling you what is next. Hopefully you've heard of the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, RZSS, but you may not know that it is associated with Edinburgh Zoo or Highland Wildlife Park. The zoo and the park are sister sites, and we're actually part of RZSS. So as well as having these two lovely sites, we actually are involved with and lead over 20 conservation projects all around the world. And the wonderful thing about zoos in particular is their engagement opportunities. And we've pledged within our strategy to connect with over 100 communities to ensure that people can connect with nature in a way that is meaningful for them. So we've got a bold vision, and we want one where nature is protected, valued and loved, but also one that people very much feel a part of. So by having these two sites, and you can see them on my map here, we are firmly based within Scotland, but we cover the Edinburgh and the sort of city area as well as the Highlands. So it means that not only are we brilliantly placed to be supporting native species conservation, and you can see just a few of the projects that we lead on here. You can get bonus points in the chat for how many of the silhouettes you can name. We'll maybe come back to those at the end. So as well as talking about native species, because of our conservation charities remit, we actually work all around the world. So when it comes to engaging people, whether that's visitors on site or building a community like a volunteer network, we've got so many different messages, so many different opportunities to find that common thread and find something that people can be excited and inspired by. As sister parks, often our teams and our discovery and learning team is included in this, operates actually across both, but we'll have set teams that actually lead the on the ground work. So at Edinburgh Zoo, based in the middle of the city, and we actually have quite an established volunteer program run for several decades, and we have over 200 volunteers who actively participate. That varies from a couple of hours every week to intense sort of summer commitments, but we have over 200 people who are wonderfully generous with their time with us. Up at Highland Wildlife Park, based, as I said before, in the Cairngorms National Park. We are a much bigger site. We actually have fewer animals. We have animals like polar bears and large ungulates like bison and deer. So they've got much larger enclosures than the smaller, more tropical animals at Edinburgh Zoo. Where we are lucky enough to have some multi-species in exhibits as well. And up at the park a few years ago, we were lucky enough to receive a National Lottery Heritage Fund award. And it is thanks to that investment that we have 3 brand new buildings, a brand new discovery and learning team. And it is thanks to those 2 elements that we're going to be able to deliver a very comprehensive activity programme based here on site and in the local community. So that means we're not quite starting from scratch, but we're not far off. And we've got about 40 volunteers at the moment, and we breaking that down a little bit in just a moment, but it's a much smaller pot that we're starting with. But what we do have is an incredibly committed and interested demographic around us, which is lovely. We're dreaming big here at Highland Wildlife Park, and establishing a volunteer programme is a key part of that activity plan. That was part of the Heritage Fund investment. We want our volunteer programme to be inclusive. We want it to be self-sustaining. We've got a 3-year pot of funding, but we want this to be the start of something that runs for forever, hopefully. We want it to be really fulfilling. That was something that came out of discussions with our about 5 historic volunteers who've been here for several years. They felt that they had a lovely time coming to the park, but they wanted to really see the fruits of their labour and understand, why they were here and what they were able to achieve, just a little bit more front and centre. So we want those roles to be fulfilling, and we want to make sure that we're offering something of value and of interest, not just to that sort of stereotypical volunteer demographic of up here, retired, often female, often relatively wealthy. We want to make sure that we're able to invite people from right across the Highlands, really, if not further afield, and have something of interest for multiple demographics. So yeah, just a small thing that we're working towards. I wanted to give you a little bit of a photo of the 3 new buildings that we've got, because it's really having these spaces that means that we've been able to ramp up our volunteer offering. The gateway, which for those who are familiar with the park is sort of just opposite where the visitor centre and cafe was, that's currently being refurbished, but it's a brand new indoor space, which kind of, when I say it out loud, I realise how mad it is. Until this, despite being open year round and being based in the Scottish Highlands, we did not have an indoor space that was not the cafe. So now that we have this beautiful area, we definitely feel the benefits when we're able to have our ranger team based within there to guide people through what is quite a busy space. Also to make sure that we're able to support people. It might be that they're tourists and English isn't their first language. It might be that they need help to navigate what, like I said, is quite a bright and noisy space. We have got lots of tactile elements in there and lots of varying heights, but it is really lovely actually when you can ensure that that engagement is person to person and face to face, as well as the interactive and digital and tactile biofacts that we've got around. So this is open for all our visitors, but it's also a lovely destination for groups. Our conservation den, compared to the bright lights and digital interactors of the gateway, is completely off grid. It's based right up at the top of the park, where you've got a view over not only our drive-through reserve, but right off Highland Wildlife Park site into the Cairngorms beyond. And actually this location, in one direction you look out over one of our conservation projects, the Saving Wildcats. You look out over their conservation breeding for release centre in one direction, and the release site for the wildcats in the other direction. So you're right in the middle of that conservation story. So hopefully that really helps give people a nudge to feeling like they're part of something without even realising it. They are able to contribute and have contributed meaningfully to a local conservation project. And then the building that I'm based in and where I am right now is our learning hive. I'm obviously slightly biased, but I think I must have one of the best offices, I think, in the local area. We have got views that span over inch marshes, which mean that I've seen golden eagles, white-tailed eagles, osprey right from my desk, which means I'm perhaps not quite as productive as I was when we were mid-build and I was in a small cabin, but it's just incredible. And all of these spaces mean that we're able to absolutely offer a year-round program, but we can also celebrate that landscape with so many more audiences, meeting so many more different and additional needs, because it's not excluding the outdoor area, but it is offering a comfortable space where we have facilities now. And these three buildings, the Gateway, the Conservation Den and the Learning Hive, they really bring the three pillars of RZSS's 2030 strategy to life. So that means conservation, it means engagement, and it means communities. And what has been wonderful is that as the buildings have developed, our teams developed. And so we've been able to really bring people along with us on this journey. Something that we found quite quickly, though, is that despite all the best intentions, being based in a rural area, interest might not be the biggest issue, but recruiting people to then be able to commit and come on site, that definitely presented some hurdles. What we have found, though, is as we've started to launch the program and as our offering is growing, that they're often the same hurdles, and that once we put a safeguard in place, we're actually much better suited and much better able to anticipate what they are and help people overcome them. I'd say the first thing that I thought of when I was writing this presentation was the biggest challenge is actually finding out how to get to and tell the people that you want. Like, we know that the interest is there. We know that people are keen to be involved with us. We know that actually for several groups, they've been wanting something like this at Highland Wildlife Park for a long, long time, but trying to reach them, trying to find out what channels are most appropriate, that has taken some digging. And I think the biggest thing that I wanted to share on this element was not to underestimate the power of word of mouth, particularly within rural communities where everybody knows each other, people pass each other, whether it's at the school pickup or, you know, the New Year's Eve Kaylee or the volunteer network up here gathering. If you can make sure that you're connected with the best individuals, that word of mouth has really, really helped us spread the word of our program. Transport and logistics. I mean, it's kind of front and center for once we've got them hooked. How do we get them here? And that's something that we're still figuring out. As a charity, there's a lot of stuff that we want to do, but we can't necessarily do. I would really like a minibus that I can go and literally collect people with, and that's something that we're working on. But it's not in the short term. We're not on a particularly active public transport route, although we do have a bus station at the entrance to the park. That is a significant walk away, you know, at least sort of 15 minutes, perhaps longer. And so before you've even kind of got to site, you're already, you know, you've gone through significant exertion, really. So what offer can we really provide for people to make sure that they are able to get to us, even when they're really excited to be a part of what we're doing? And the biggest thing that we've learned on that is to make sure that we are up to date with the information that we're able to give people. The seasonal changes to the bus timetable, the changes to the train availability, taxi numbers from the local station, bike hire. There's been lots of different routes and people have been incredibly open-minded and creative, but we really have found that the main thing that they need from us in that first instance is to be upfront with that situation and to provide as much as we can the avenues that they could find a solution through. Being based up in the Highlands, like I said, it's very, very cold in the winter. Managing year-round opportunities does mean the weather and means the temperatures, and make sure that people understand that actually we are, even with those areas, an outdoor site. What would they need from us to be able to ensure that they were staying healthy, that they were able to commit, that this was going to be a fulfilling and wonderful addition to their life, rather than a freezing cold offer that they stand with gritted teeth through. And from an engagement volunteer perspective, we get quite quiet in the winter. So it might be that actually for what they're looking for getting from a volunteer program, it might be that peak times or holiday programs are better suited. So again, we just found that making sure that we were upfront and had done our research as to what our offering really looked like, that was really important in managing expectations. Again, being an outdoor site, ensuring accessibility is that we really just do what we can. We have been able to re-top some of the paths here so that mobility scooters can access all areas of the site now. We are working on having sensory bags for these indoor areas, working on having more resources for those who perhaps need mobility support to get to the top of the hill, or perhaps live with a visual impairment, which means that coming to the zoo wasn't something that they'd really thought would be an exciting thing for them in the past. But now actually with the resources and the expanded team, we've been able to support lots of people, and we've been able to connect with organizations like Visualize, who have come and done audits of our site and been able to steer us in the right direction and show us what's possible. And then something that's perhaps a little different to those, but something that I think is really important to mention, is that within rural areas, it might be the case that actually you're competing for the same individuals who are interested in volunteering as your neighbouring organisations, and to make sure that you actually have figured out what offer there is already existing out in the local community, and what are you adding to that. Like, we don't want to detract from it. We don't want to be offering something that doesn't have its own sort of core value. We want to make sure that this is a constructive addition to the community as a whole, not just to Highland Wildlife Park. And actually, I wanted to end on that point for the challenges, because that's one that I think we've turned into a key opportunity. And because you are often looking at individuals who perhaps volunteer with several hats on, we found that there is really an established sense of community that perhaps isn't there in city sites like we found at Edinburgh Zoo. I think there's also been a big shift since sort of pre and post COVID with how people look at volunteering and what it means to them and what their time means to them. Up here, perhaps slightly stereotypical, but I've definitely found since myself moving up from Edinburgh, there's a little bit of a slower pace to life here. There's much more overlap with who I know and where I'll see them. And I found it quite easy moving up here a couple of years ago to start building relationships. You can, after asking a few questions, you can find out who's who and who are the key people that you need to link in with. And everybody has been incredibly welcoming, and it's been a lovely part of the process. Slightly similar to what I was saying before on the challenges, I think really making sure that you are recruiting for a good reason, that you're offering fulfilling and genuine volunteer opportunities where people are needed to make a difference. It's not just a tick box exercise that you want to make sure, you can say, yes, I've got volunteers on the books. And for us as a charity, it's actually critical for us to have a committed volunteer network. Volunteers are absolutely crucial in us delivering our mission, connecting with that number of communities and reversing the decline of over 50 species before 2030. Volunteers are a key part of that. And one of the most rewarding things of our volunteer program so far is our biodiversity volunteers, which we soft launched this summer because we were looking for a very specific sort of beetle, a blood red longhorn beetle. And we wanted some individuals who knew the local area, who perhaps had a baseline knowledge of invertebrates and surveying. And we were hoping that they would literally be more eyes on the ground and help us go out and understand whether this beetle was anywhere nearby or whether we needed to start a conservation breeding program. And I was absolutely delighted when it was the volunteers rather than our staff team who found one of these beetles. And we actually had interest from the Daily Mail, believe it or not, who covered the story. And so it was really fulfilling for the volunteers and incredibly useful for us internally, trying to get other teams on board to take on volunteers and give some of their staff time. I couldn't have asked for anything more. And so it was an absolutely wonderful start to our program. And we did find 12 overall. And so we started a conservation breeding program where we would bring and pair adult beetles. I've gone on a slight tangent here, but I promise it's quick, for a few weeks before releasing them back into the wild. And time will tell whether they successfully laid any eggs, but it was a fantastic sort of trial and a start for this sort of program. And that also leads me on really nicely to say that instead of competing with local organisations, we found that by far the best way to approach it is to make meaningful collaborations. And actually, I saw Rosie from the RSPB pop a little message in the chat. We're very early stages of discussing between RZSS and RSPB and CMPA, a lot of acronyms, but the Cairngorms National Park, as to how the three of us can work together to make sure that we are offering a really eclectic bunch of roles that meets lots of different needs and provides people with really meaningful ways to participate in community life. And I think especially when you're working with other charities, we're all able to be very honest with each other about the realities of the small pots we're working with, the restrictions, and it's been wonderful to be able to pool those resources. And it's felt really nice and really genuine that we're doing what we're doing because we want to make a difference to local people and ensure that the new programme and the buildings at Highland Wildlife Park really are seen as a resource rather than a sort of shiny nice to have. So in terms of recruitment, we have soft launched our biodiversity volunteer role, which went really well. We put up posters and put little flyers and gave information to those key individuals, and word of mouth, like I was saying earlier, was key. And so now what we're really doing is working on retention and a rewards program for them. We actually opened up recruitment for our engagement volunteer role today. So I'll be able to let you know a little bit more about that. Happy to answer any questions after, but I'll make sure I send an update in a few weeks. With our retention and rewards offer, we were able to take a lot of learnings from Edinburgh Zoo, but we also, although it wasn't reviewed, we did have volunteers on site, the longest serving of which I think has been with us for about 7 years. So it was a really valuable exercise to go and talk to those individuals and say, why are you still here after 7 years? What are you interested in? What are you able to get from Highland Wildlife Park? We want to invest more in the programme, help us make this better. And I think that involvement was really well received. And knowing your volunteers, I would say that's been really key when we were starting with that biodiversity role. We knew that we would be probably approaching people who didn't have that much interest in a wildlife park or a zoo. They were more interested in that wildlife conservation side. And so knowing what those little hooks, those little sort of sparkly bits that grab their attention, knowing or having a good best guess at what angle we might approach them from, that was really helpful. And it's been brilliant in when we've been trying to figure out how to thank them and celebrate them and their participation, and thank them for their time. So we do have a reward system in place at the zoo, where after 1 year of service, you get an RZSS membership, which gives you access to Edinburgh Zoo and Highland Wildlife Park, as well as several other zoos around the country that partake in that scheme. It also gives you discount for up to 6 family or friend members. So that's a nice little thing. But we also hold an annual volunteer dinner, and we make sure that there are regular updates right from our sort of team leads up to our CEO, because our volunteers are an incredibly valued part of our team. And the niche tailored role profiles, that was something that we decided very early on, partly because we had so many different things that we wanted to offer volunteer opportunities within. The biodiversity role, supporting our conservation team, kind of, out there literally in the undergrowth, to engagement volunteers where we'd like them around site that would be based at Highland Wildlife Park, talking with people, obviously a big part of that role. The longhorn beetles haven't talked back so far. And then also our learning program, where we would love some volunteers for the new school holiday programs and after school clubs that we're going to be setting up. So quite different offerings, looking for quite different people, but also offering quite different training opportunities. So we decided early on that we were just going to split these instead of doing a generic RZSS volunteer recruitment drive. And it seems to be working well so far. And something that I'll come on to with our plans, it's not something we've quite put in place yet. We'll wait for our engagement volunteer recruitment drive, but we want to make sure that with all those roles, there's the opportunity for advancement training, whether that's to kind of dig a bit deeper into that specific role, help us with maybe some data collection or some specific programs that we're running on site, or to make sure that you're doing it the best that you can. Like, can we ensure that there's internal staff talks or training in terms of public engagement that we offer to our staff body, and making sure that our volunteers feel part of that, we know has been well received at Edinburgh. And I think the other thing in terms of specifically for being based in a rural area is being really flexible. We started off by saying we'd like 70 hours a year, and that was worked out sort of on a weekly basis and what would be realistic for several people. But actually that was based on public transport routes in Edinburgh. Up here, it might literally not be possible for people to get to us for those winter months. What would be an appropriate ask for them? How could we make sure that people were committing enough time to get significant amounts out of it? And we're still figuring out those details, but being flexible and having an open dialogue about what we're looking for, understanding what people are wanting from us, that's actually been a really constructive thing in itself. So having those clear role profiles that I mentioned before, that's ensured that we've been clear about what we have wanted and needed, but it's given us the parameters that we can be actually really quite flexible within what that looks like and how people meet those needs. Already from the beginning, we've had people, say, yes, I want to do this for forever. How I want to go from this, I want to then go on and help you with summer school. How can I, sort of get involved with that and set myself up for that? So having those expansion opportunities, that's going to be key. Training both with the staff body, like I was saying, but also we're hoping to offer links to other online, in particular, courses and classes that we can support. We would absolutely reap the benefits of that, but hopefully it would also make us a really rewarding program to be a part of. And I had to put it on there because when I've asked the volunteers what they love and what keeps them coming back, it's the animals here. And that doesn't just mean our beautiful polar bears, which we have 4 of. It also means, actually, for those biodiversity volunteers, it meant the behind the scenes tour of our pine hoverfly and medicinal leech facilities. And so I think, really going back to our roots as a wildlife conservation charity, understanding that at some level our volunteers are going to be in some way supportive of wildlife and interested in animals, making sure that we give them those little special VIP treatments. When babies are born, we've just had a baby vicuña born yesterday, telling them news like that, showing them behind the scenes to where all the magic happens with our medicinal leeches and dark-bordered beauty moths. I think that's been a really key thing, and that really is so easy to do. So it's making sure that we understand who our volunteers are, what they want, and making sure that we're offering that regularly enough. Next steps, as I said, we launched our recruitment for our engagement volunteer drive today. So we will hopefully before Christmas have a pretty decent complement of volunteers. We will then be in early spring launching our community and learning volunteers. That will be timed so that individuals are able to support our froglets, tadpoles and frogs program for early learners. We will also be able to have volunteers supporting our Spring Explorers program, which is an outdoor play half-term session that we run in February, and we do Autumn Explorers in October. And then we'll be doing our biodiversity volunteer offering in early summer again. And I think the lessons that we've put in place about how we contact people, having an up-to-date list of ensuring that how they get here and being flexible to make sure that they feel confident and comfortable talking through the challenges with us. That's meant that we've been well placed to actually pick up on some of the conversations that we've been having for the last few years and hopefully bring it all together and help people reconnect with nature in a beautiful part of the world, and hopefully ensuring that they feel ownership of it and are able to celebrate it and share it with people that they live alongside. So it's been a wonderful part of my job. It's definitely been one of the bigger focuses, and I'm very lucky to work with our senior discovery and learning officer Iona and our volunteer community officer Lexi, who some of you might come across soon. In various ways, I think we're involved in VON or Make Your Mark, so we're all very happy to be contacted and to share any lessons and also to hear any examples of best practice. But I think for today I am probably slightly over my 15 minutes, but I am very happy to take any questions at all.
Thank you, Jess, for that. That was really great. There's so many things like I've kind of forgotten about, but also so many things I'm like, oh, I'm on the right track. So that's fantastic. Great
Good.
presentation. Lovely.
Thank you.
Right. Any questions for Jess, whether in the chat function or, in person? Yeah. Don't be shy.
Oh, Julie, you visited last week. That's lovely. Yes, and Rosie and I and Danny from the Cairngorms National Park, we're starting to have a bit of a chat about how we can make sure that we're sharing lessons and supporting volunteer groups. So I know that RZSS isn't the only one sort of working in this space and very happy to share. Wondered if you offer any help with outdoor clothing. Suki, that's such a good question. The short answer is yes. We have a pretty good cupboard full of wellies and jackets, and our volunteer program, for volunteers, we give polo shirts, sweatshirts, and also jackets. My honest answer, though, is that we're always looking for sponsors or support on that, because the jackets work really well in Edinburgh Zoo. They're totally fine. But up here, where last year I recorded -10 on site, like they're warm, but they're not that warm. And so what I've ended up recommending for people and it's something that we're still working through how we can offer it, is tabard. So if they want, because people who live up here, they're often really well equipped, and I don't want them to have to wear worse jackets just because they're branded. So we've come up with tabards where people can either layer, we can give them one of ours, or they can wear their own and have a volunteer tabard on top. We're still figuring out what exactly the best course of action is, because I'd really like to be able to offer appropriate jackets that people can work in -10 with, but they're incredibly expensive. So we want to make sure that if it's mainly, waterproof trousers or polos or jumpers that more people need for the summer, rather than maybe 5 serious winter jackets, it's a bit of a balance. But there've been a few local groups who and charity shops actually who have been interested in chatting with us and saying sometimes we get coats that we'd be really happy to pass on to you. So I'm definitely open to exploring more. I don't think we've got that quite right, but that's what we're doing at the moment.
I think Jill's next, then it's Tamsin, and then Rhiannon.
Yeah, expenses. This is something that we are talking through right now, with such a variety of transport methods and the distances to travel. What we did find, and what we've done at Edinburgh Zoo up till now, is we had a sort of a location within which that we would pay travel expenses, but that just isn't able to be copy and pasted up here. Local means everything from 5 minutes to 45. So we're reviewing that at the moment. I think what we're probably leaning towards is a cap, so that people can get cover, but they can also it's putting them in control. Essentially, they're saying, right, with that cover, that means I can do X number of days. So maybe that means I need to do X number of hours, or maybe that means I can only do in the summer where the trains run more regularly. So we haven't 100% decided on that yet. It's something that this is one of those things where, as a charity, we know what we want to do. We want to be able to offer travel expenses, questions asked, but we just can't. And we want to, more than anything, make sure that what we're offering is fair and able to be rolled out to everybody. So I think the cap way at least ensures that we can budget for it, and hopefully we can be really upfront with what people's expectations can then be. But yeah, it's a difficult one, that one.
Jill's next with her hand up.
Hello. Oh, sorry, my screen's just gone a bit weird. Right, back again. Yeah, this is really interesting, and we are in the process of rethinking volunteering and how it meets the needs of On Fife and how we meet the needs of volunteers. And something in the organisation that we're trying to define is that we don't want to, I suppose, take value away from people's jobs. We don't want to we're trying to define what's an employee, what's appropriate for an employee to do, what's appropriate for a volunteer to do, and how do they relate. Because at the moment we go, volunteers can't do anything that staff do. And I just wondered how you identified that yourself. What do employees do and what do volunteers do, and how do they sort of relate to one another?
Yeah, and again, a really fantastic question. And it was something at the beginning that actually it was our volunteers who were really reluctant to not do certain things. For a few years, and there was legal guidance that came through. That's what I should start off by saying. There's legal guidance that can provide you a kind of good framework as to what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to ask someone to do while they're volunteering. And I think that's maybe another thing, being in a rural area, like, people are incredibly helpful. They're so used to volunteering and sometimes running entire organizations on a voluntary basis. Why can't they come and help us park any cars? Like, there's little certain tweaks like that that it is really difficult to find a good answer to, but we managed to break it down and it helped actually, because as a society, as a charity, we redefined our employee role profiles. So we had a much better understanding of what our staff were expected to do. And that also then gave managers and team leads a much better business case to be able to say, I cannot park all these cars in summer without volunteer support. I need additional assistance. So it actually, understanding from that staff area, then meant that we were able to identify where it would be appropriate for a volunteer support or not. And that's helped not only develop the volunteer profiles, but actually the charity as a whole. So I think trying to look at them in isolation is really muddy, but if you worked with them together, what are you asking staff to do? You can then more clearly see, right, where do volunteers fit within this? But it is something that's really challenging. And I think helping that along was because we were reviewing everything from scratch. We didn't have to do a kind of big, you have to stop helping, you know, visitor experience, open up the park or water the plants or do the car park. We need to make sure that actually we're offering new and more in-depth other things rather than limitations on the sort of the baseline that we were doing before. But it really varies, and it's kind of, on the one hand, a wonderful problem to have, but at the same time, with that legal guidance, there are really clear, you know, what you must and must not do. I think though that it fits really nicely into the open communication channels, and it's something that we've definitely it's been a learning, it's been a sort of like an evolving thing about what roles would be useful to have. And so because we've been able to be really upfront and say to volunteers, we're starting from scratch, what does this look like for you? As a charity, you know, our discovery and learning team for about 16 years was one person. Like, there's now, in a sort of peak of summer, 8 of us. What we know within our own remit has changed. So I think making people feel like they're coming along with you on the journey, that helps when you anticipate there being like little changes, rather than feeling like you don't know what you're doing and what's going on. We're actually all learning together. And that's been really well received. But it's definitely something from a legal perspective to get your head around and have at least a starting point, even if it ends up changing.
Thanks for that, Jess. I think, Tamsin, you had your hand up earlier on, did you?
Yeah, it was just a bit.
Hey, Tamsin.
Hi, lovely to see you. Fantastic presentation as always. So it's sort of similar to Jill's point, really. It was just about, you know, the competition for employees is really challenging in a rural environment, and then adding on the competition for volunteers. And I think you've talked about it, having that role clarity is really good, and those open conversations. But it just makes it even more difficult, because it's hard to get paid staff, never mind volunteering staff. But I think you've answered it. Thank you.
Well, one extra thing I can add to that actually is with the Cairngorms National Park, they have a volunteer ranger profile, and their volunteers are absolutely, you know, integral in them being able to man the park in the summer. They go out and patrol huge areas, everything from keeping tabs on fire to litter to having lovely discussions with people, and really that's super similar to what we're looking for. I mean, hopefully less of the fire, but at Highland Wildlife Park, what we'd be looking for from an engagement volunteer. So because we approached from the collaborative rather than the competitive side, we're going to set up, and there's been great sort of indication of interest in this, like an exchange program. Like, can we actually ensure that those volunteers, which we know from when we've hosted their volunteer ranger groups on site, because as part of the national park, we want to make sure that they as a group are up to date with what we're doing and what we're offering. Hopefully they can point people to us. And when they were on site, it became clear that they'd be really interested in doing a little bit more with us and finding out a bit more. But the last thing we ever wanted to do was to deplete the volunteer ranger group. So actually creating an exchange adds value to both our programs independently. Thanks, Samson.
Brilliant question. Very good answer. That's awesome. Any other
I think
questions?
was there one in the chat that I missed? Oh, Rhiannon, yes, I think that we might have been in a webinar or something before together, and yes, I would love to chat. And was there another one that I missed? No, I thought one popped up, but maybe it was a comment. I'll put my email in the chat, everyone, because I honestly we wouldn't have got to where we've got within such a short space of time without sharing ideas. And being part of Make Your Mark and Vaughan has been brilliant for all of us at RZSS in sharing not only best practice, but also, you know, sometimes quite harsh lessons learned. So it's lovely to have this space and to now be in a position to share what we're doing. So I'll pop my email just there, and yeah, please do get in touch. And if you're ever up this way, it'd be lovely to see you and show you those spaces in person.
Oh, Jess, before you just pop off, we've got Nicola with her hand up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, hi, Jess. So you were talking about how word of mouth is really important in rural communities because people know each other and they talk to each other and so on. Do you have any tips for kind of establishing who the people are that are talking most? Because, you know, you mentioned about knowing key people and the ones who are in all of the different spaces and chatting to each other and so on. Like, how did you start that and identify the right people?
I went everywhere and I spoke to the people whose faces I saw at multiple places. And I think I also made sure that if I was headed out to the shops after work, for example, like I'm not sure if you're familiar with this area, but we're just outside sort of, well, in between Kincraig and Kingnewsy really, where if I was popping to the co-op and I had my badge on, I'd make sure that I was smiling and that I was polite and not pushing in the queue. And I would take those opportunities whenever they came up. I know it's not maybe a great answer because there is expectation on that sort of out of work element, but I think that's a big part of like the rural life. Like it's a lifestyle. It's very difficult to like kind of split the guy who delivered my logs yesterday was the guy who came and, delivered my order of chairs for the education room. Like you never know who you're going to meet where. And I think being able to be welcoming, even if you don't have any details, that goes so far. So my number one thing was just literally turning up to everything, but also being really open and sort of the equivalent of shouting from the rooftops of like, this is something that we want to do. Like, is anybody interested in it? Not doing and developing something behind closed doors up until I got to the point of felt like I had something meaningful to share. Actually, right from the very beginning, say this is on our radar. What's happening out there? Who'd be interested? And actually, the initial interest was so overwhelming. I had to say, pause. I have no team and I have no buildings. That sounds wonderful. Let's get together and figure out details, and then let's make a plan for next year. And so that was at the end of 23. I think the thing to flag with word of mouth, though, is the other side of it is if something goes badly or if someone has a bad experience. And I think things will go badly, and it might be that it's completely out of your control and it's weather related and you have to last minute cancel, or you have a power cut and so you have no heating in a building, or worst case scenario on site here, someone comes on site as an engagement volunteer and has a really bad experience with a visitor, like as a complaint. And I think that's where there's often situations where there's nothing that you can do about that specific, but you can be confident that you have put as many measures in place to training to help them deal with difficult situations like that, open communication channels. So if something does go wrong last minute, it's not a surprise that they've, had a call last minute or, heard through the grapevine that actually it's not running. So I think just being aware of the two sides, that's important with the word of mouth one. But it's something that that I think shouldn't be you shouldn't be scared of. Things will not go to plan all the time. And so I think building in a little contingency is a good recommendation. Yeah, volunteers delivers your food shop, Rhiannon. Yes. Or volunteer fatigue. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, yeah, that's a great one, Rosie. And so I think having seasonal offering or having sort of opt-in volunteer roles. So something for the biodiversity volunteer role, that longhorn beetle survey, that was one specific thing. We then asked if people wanted, in addition, to do pine hoverfly surveys or wanted to come on site to help us with wildflower management. There wasn't that expectation of, oh, you weren't here at 9 a.m. on Friday, where were you? Why aren't you coming back? It was more bite size. And again, the collaborative sort of nature of those roles meant that we could ensure that we weren't going to end up with brand new role that ended up with everyone over here and nobody left over there. And I think when it comes to launching, it's taken us, we got into this building in June. We were hoping to open up all volunteering at the beginning of the year, but we decided to wait until we were confident that actually what we were offering was right for the communities we were reaching out to, and that we knew our spaces well enough to really know what we were asking for. So I think although the raising awareness and getting that word out, that doesn't need to wait until you've got a shiny product, but that launch and that actual bringing people on site, I think be confident with what you're doing, be able to anticipate some of those potential for error, because people will have committed sometimes a lot of time and money to get to you, never mind even when they're then on site. So being able to be at your best when you're reaching that launch point, that's definitely been useful, I think, because there's been, I think, some instances up here where often, if it's smaller scale community work, people will turn up and they don't know what they're doing, or there isn't enough equipment to go round, or there isn't an end time, even sometimes really simple things like that. And it just makes them feel like they've been part of something and they want to come back and do it again. So yeah, I think launching when you've got that plan, that's worked for us so far.
Thanks for that, Jess. I think Gabby's got her hand up as well.
Well, Gabby, you're really quiet on
You're very
my
quiet,
screen,
Gabby.
but I can hear you, which is confusing. It's just very, very quiet.
I know why.
Haha.
I was wondering if if anyone knows the proportion of people who volunteer in rural areas as opposed to more urban areas. Just think about that comment about fatigue, which I reckon I live in a city, but I have come from a rural area, and I know that people especially seem to do a lot of informal volunteering a lot. But yeah, it's kind of more of a curiosity.
I don't have the figures to
really.
head, but when I last saw them, they were pre-COVID figures, which actually meant that things weren't particularly relevant anymore. But I don't have them to head, but I will look them out because I
can look as well.
Yeah. But I think because there was such a different landscape. Yeah. Oh, Tamsin, do you know?
Just on a quick search, in 2022 in Scotland, 51% of people in rural areas volunteered, compared to only 44% in urban areas. So, I mean, it's not huge step changes, but there is a difference. A fewer people volunteer urban areas, which is counterintuitive, isn't it? But anyway, I can try and find, or I'll send the link.
Thank you. Yeah. And I just think that we've spoken about it in several other sort of workshops, but it's still such a different landscape. We're still figuring out what people want, like from a sort of, how does volunteering factor in your lives? You know, like I think it's people are still working that out themselves. And I think, you know, COVID was such a lifestyle shift for such a long period of time. People got out the habit of stuff, which takes a long time to get back into. But yeah, it's a tricky one, and it's something that I think I've got a lot of hope for. I think, you know, the reaction that we've had to the programs has been really positive. We just need to connect all those dots of getting people here and getting them back again. But I'm confident we're on the right track. Oh, thanks for that, Kirsty. Kirsty's just posted in Scottish Household Survey, which breaks down the link in the chat for everyone.
Brilliant. Gabby, do you still have your hand up? Do you still have another question, or is it just a tech being techie? Or I can have one more question or a lovely comment. I think that is it for now. Thank you so much, Jess. I really liked your presentation.
Thank you for having me. Oh.
I was like, oh, this is some new stuff. So yeah, like Zuki says, yeah, really helpful ideas, very practical. We can talk a good talk, saying we want, you know, volunteers to feel included, and, you know, gaining volunteers and not just having it as a tick box, but you've got some very practical ideas. So I really hope everybody had some food for thought and lots of really great things. So that's great. Our next event, it will be coming up in November. So for those that are on the mailing list for Vaughan, you'll receive it. And for those that don't, we've got the email up at the top. Kirsty put that in there, so thank you so much. And the event in November, which is Thursday the 14th of November, that will be 11 a.m. till 12 p.m. There you go. I remembered the end of the session, Jess. There you go, you've helped me. And that is the Volunteer Network Peer Support Session. So anybody's got any queries, any ideas, or even if you're like, I need to get this done now, please do email us beforehand so then we can discuss it on that day. And, you know, we're really excited for it. And it's really great to have you all here. We've had really high numbers today. That's wonderful. I don't think it's down to me sharing. I think it's you, Jess, and lovely Kirsty, they're helping out behind the scenes. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been wonderful, and even all the questions and comments. And it's really great to get together and really share ideas, because we're a knowledgeable bunch of people. So thank you all so much, and hope you have a great rest of the week. Toodles.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you. Good Thursday.